Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this week we have a lot to talk about with the iOS 27 public beta, iPhone 18 Pro leaks, and much more. This is your weekly Apple News update for July 2nd, 2026. Now, with Apple raising prices last week, Apple said they could no longer keep the prices the same due to rising memory costs. After the price increases, Micron, who manufactures memory, has said in a statement given to the Wall Street Journal that we told a couple of customers who were being very aggressive with pricing at this time that this is not constructive. A lot of the industry investments got shut down in 2023 because of really poor pricing and really poor margins. So they're blaming Apple basically without saying Apple, and also Apple is trying to solve this issue themselves. With the price increases in RAM, Apple has apparently asked the current US government admin to allow the use of Chinese RAM to help meet demand. Apple is currently in talks with CXMT and YMTC in China, according to Bloomberg, to try and get some memory where they're manufacturing a lot more memory that could help bring those costs back down, or at least their profit margin go up. Now, Apple Vision Pro is something that John Ternus, the incoming CEO, has reportedly decided not to focus on if the rumors are true, and this past week, the person who was in charge of development of the Vision Pro and future smart glasses has left Apple for OpenAI. And while I do like the Vision Pro, I don't think it's a mainstream consumer device. It has some incredible features. I use it regularly, but again, it's super expensive, and Apple raised prices on this as well. So it looks like we won't have any update for this for years, but Vision OS isn't going anywhere for now. But again, it's not the focus anymore. Beats released a new orange version of their Solo Buds on this past Tuesday, and you can now pick them up at Best Buy in the United States or 7-Eleven in Japan for $79.99, or they seem to be on sale in some places for $69.99 for the 4th of July deal in the United States. So if you haven't picked some of these up and you've been wanting something different from AirPods but having similar features, these are actually a nice value for that. Now, Tim Cook has been talking to the EU recently about how they can bring the new Siri AI to the EU without compromising privacy. The Financial Times has said that Apple is working with them to bring the features, so hopefully they can resolve this maybe even before the launch of iOS 27. So some of that has to do with them not wanting to hand over data. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but at this point, again, they've delayed it in the EU as well as China for different reasons along those lines. When it comes to app updates this week, well, Apple updated Final Cut Pro and other Creator Studio apps in a big way. If we go over to their press release, you'll see it says Apple Creator Studio gets smarter, faster, and more connected, and it allows things for maybe capturing a frame within Final Cut Pro and then sending it directly to Pixelmator Pro. So maybe you want to make a thumbnail based off of one of the frames in your video. It makes that a little bit easier just using the Share tool. So there's a lot of updates there along with AI integrations, things such as subtitles and much more that automatically works now, along with some UI improvements. So definitely worth updating and checking out as I've been using it. And again, I like some of these new features. And again, it carries across to all the different devices and updates as well across Creator Studio. If we go into the App Store, Apple has updated Apple Arcade with some new games such as Family Feud Pocket. There's additional ones as well. So we have Pocket City 2 Plus, Draw It Plus, Creatures of the Deep Plus, Dungeon Crawler Plus, and again, Family Feud that we had here. So those are all new now. If you subscribe to Apple Arcade, you can try them out. There's also a new beta for WhatsApp. So if you use WhatsApp regularly, many people do of course, it now brings Liquid Glass to the iPad according to WA Beta Info. Also, if you haven't seen it already, WhatsApp is rolling out the ability to select a username. So you can reserve that now if you haven't already, and it's separate for individuals and businesses. So just keep that in mind. If you're using the WhatsApp Business app, that's a separate update, and you'll need to go into that app in order to reserve it for your business. But I did have it available and reserved my username, and it's connected to my other Meta accounts as well. When it comes to weekly Apple deals, well, there's quite a few worth mentioning. Everything from AirPods, AirPods Pro 3 at $225, and AirTag 2 is now $89 for a 4-pack. So if you've been wanting to pick up an AirTag 2, you wanted a bunch of them, again, they're discounted a little bit. So I'll link that along with other updates and deals in the description below, as there's typically deals on things such as iPad and more. When it comes to releases this week, we had iOS 26.5.2 released to the public with a bunch of security fixes, about 29 in total. Also, we had iOS 26.6 Beta 3, which isn't a huge update, but many people are saying is very stable. And I would expect iOS 26.6 RC or maybe Beta 4 next week. Also next week, we could see iOS 27 Beta 3 or possibly a Beta 2 re-release with maybe the public beta within a week or two at this point. We don't have specific dates, but last year they released it around the 24th, so it may be a couple weeks until we see that public beta. If they announce it officially, of course, I'll let you know. But at this point, I'm assuming it's going to be sometime maybe in the midweek, maybe around the 13th or 14th. But again, they could push it toward the end of July as well. We just don't know it just yet, but hopefully it's sooner rather than later. Of course, then we'll have iOS 27 Beta 3, maybe all the way up to Beta 8 through September, and then we'll have a public release usually in mid-September around the iPhone 18 launch. So that's what we're looking forward to. As far as iOS 26.6's public release, I would expect that sometime in mid-July as well. When it comes to the iPhone 18 Pro and 18 Pro Max, we expect it to mostly look the same as last year's iPhone 17 models, with maybe a few different colors we've seen before. However, IDC had originally thought that Apple could raise prices by $100 when it launches later this year. However, they now believe Apple could raise the starting price by $200 after seeing the price hikes Apple already applied to existing products in the store last week. So given that, we could see a price hike, but typically when they do that, they also include more storage. So hopefully they do something along those lines, but at this point we don't have any evidence of that other than that we know it's in production, or at least close to production, since they need to make millions of them. Also, the next base iPhone is set to be pushed to 2027, as Apple is now releasing the Pro devices in the fall supposedly, with normal models in the following year. Now it seems the iPhone 18 may ship with just 9 GB of RAM instead of 12 GB like the Pro models, according to Ming Chi-Kuo. So that would help it run all of the newer Apple Intelligence models, some additional features, but not have the 12 GB that the Pro models do. It also seems that in the recent rumors of the red or burgundy iPhone, they seem to be true, as a recent image posted on Weibo shows a SIM card tray from the upcoming iPhone with a new reddish color. So many people have said to expect maybe a burgundy or red color this year, along with maybe a blue and black as well as silver. So hopefully we see some changes there. I know many people love the blue colors on iPhones. I would love to have another black one, as well as maybe a new bright red one. But again, if it's burgundy, it's going to be a little bit different. But either way, we'll see some sort of change typically year over year. There were also leaks on X this week that showed drop tests of the iPhone 18 Pro model. However, those posts have been removed though. Some of this could have been from a recent data leak from Tata, and Apple is working to make sure that they keep their information secure where they can. So that makes a lot of sense. I would expect it really to look basically like what we have here, but again, maybe have some new colors and of course some new features and chips as well. I think the phone most people are anticipating is the new folding phone. The upcoming iPhone Fold, or iPhone Ultra as many people are calling it, is set to begin production in July according to the elec. This is the typical time frame for Apple production, as again, they get millions ready for release, and another report from Nikkei Asia has said that Apple has told suppliers to prepare up to 10 million of the new iPhone. So we could see something along those lines. Of course, they have to manufacture the hinge, and it's a little bit more complicated, but again, it will compete with things such as the Z Fold that Samsung makes. So we should expect something like that later this year, with again, the regular iPhone and the iPhone Air launching sometime next year instead. Now with the iPad Pro, Apple's next iPad Pro is not releasing until the spring of 2027, according to a new report by Mark Gurman. The design is not expected to change at all, and I don't think that's much of an issue, as this is my favorite Apple product at this point. I did a video about 9 months later the other day, and it's super rigid, it works well, it has a good battery life, the display is incredible, and so there's not much to change there, but of course the internals. So according to Mark Gurman, we could see an M7 next year with this, or possibly an M6. We don't know for sure, but we do expect a spec bump, of course with new features there. Of course, Apple is still working on Apple Watches as well, and according to Instant Digital on Weibo, Apple will finally redesign the Apple Watch next year, not this year. So the leaker claims that the redesign will include changes to the band system, so it will change how you apply the bands or connect them, and this doesn't surprise me if they have to change the design, and it was sort of hinged around this overall band connection. So maybe we'll see something like that, maybe a round watch, but again, it wouldn't be this year, it would be next year. Now, of course, Apple is working on its next version of chips, and Mark Gurman this past weekend has said that Apple plans to release a base M6 processor in a MacBook later this year. Instead, they would skip the Pro models of the M6 and jump right to the M7. So it looks like we won't get that, and then devices such as the Mac Studio that haven't been updated in a while could get an M5 Ultra this year. So the M5 is an incredible chipset, that wouldn't bother me at all, and of course the Mac Studio will then later get an M7, as Apple tends to skip a year every so often. So they'll skip that processor for the Mac Studio and jump right from M1 to M3 to M5, for example. The Mac Studio could also release with up to 768 gigabytes of RAM, according to Mark Gurman. But given the current price increases, especially with RAM, I can't believe many would want to afford that. Also, Mark Gurman has said that the M7 Ultra Mac Studio would release around 2028 and offer even better cooling than the current models. Of course, many of us are looking forward to a MacBook Ultra or an upcoming touchscreen MacBook, and that's still on track for release later this year or early next year, according to Mark Gurman. He's also said this past weekend that Apple will use the M5 Pro and M5 Max chips in that device. So again, not an M6, an M5 that's plenty fast, but maybe it will have even better cooling or some enhancement to those chips. Also, as we move closer to Apple using OLED displays, Apple is said to be moving toward panels that can display even more colors, according to TrendForce. The new displays are said to cover 95% of the BT 2020 standard, which is more than DCI-P3. So I always welcome better increases there, and of course that helps with color accuracy and creating YouTube videos like this. Apple was also recently said to be working on a smart ring. Now, I've used smart rings from Samsung. I really appreciate them, actually. And according to the leaker Kosutami, he said it's in testing and they're working on it, basically. That doesn't mean it will launch to the public, but maybe if it has sensors similar to an Apple Watch, you could wear the ring instead of an Apple Watch. That would be a little more comfortable for me, and I would appreciate that personally, having most of the benefits there. But of course, sensors that are a little bit larger would have to be removed from the ring, as that wouldn't work. But monitoring steps, maybe heartbeat, things like that would definitely be welcome. And so that's everything this week with Apple's recent price increases, what they're doing about it, also iOS 27 public beta, and of course we could get some surprises in between. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.